In the first reading today from the prophet Ezekiel, we see that the Lord has taken Ezekiel to a cemetery, and as he looks about it, the graves of all, he promises him that he will raise these people from their graves. I will raise you from your graves. I will put flesh in your bones, and I will put my spirit in you so that you may live. I promise this. I am the Lord. He's predicting Jesus coming in the New Testament. And in this beautiful and touching story about Mary and Martha and Lazarus, we see Jesus' humanity come so clearly to us. Sometimes we just think about Jesus as the divine Son of God, which he is. But we can forget that he was truly human as well as truly divine. And he shows us that in this beautiful story today about Lazarus. Obviously, Jesus loved Mary and Martha and Lazarus very much. He went to their homes often to get away from the crowd so that he could just sit down with these friends and have dinner and recoup his strength and have some good conversation with them. Their home was like a home away from home. And so he was very close to them. And he said people knew how much Jesus loved Lazarus. He delays in coming to help him when he's sick because he knows what's going to happen ahead of time, that through him, God's glory will be shown. And so Mary and Martha realize he's in town, and Martha goes to him, and we know the story, just heard it. But how many times have we said that when we've lost a loved one? Lord, if you'd been here, he would not have died, or she would not have died. And we can feel the anguish in her heart. She's almost scolding Jesus for coming too late. That's very human. And Jesus acknowledges that. And then it says that Jesus himself wept. Jesus wept. We can no longer say that he does not understand our feelings when we lose someone we love, because Jesus himself wept. And of course, then in the beautiful sign that he performs, the miracle, I'm telling them, roll away the stone and Lazarus come out. Must have been quite a sight. He looked like a mummy because they used to wrap everybody up in cloth when they buried him. And so he says, untie him, set him free. Symbolic of Jesus being in the tomb for 3 days and rising from the dead. But notice with Lazarus, he comes out of the tomb with the burial bonds all still on him because he's going to need them again. Someday he will still have to die. When Jesus rose from the dead, he left his burial cloths in the tomb because he would not need them again, because he rose to eternal glory and resurrection and new life and eternity. And so the difference in the symbolism. It's so important for us to realize that Jesus understands our humanity. There's a story about a family who owned a dog. The dog's name was Waddles, probably because that's the way he walked. But one day, the boy came home from school, and his father had come home early, only to tell him that their precious dog had wandered into the street, was hit by a car, and was killed. And they decided to have a funeral for him in their backyard, and so they buried him under the apple tree there. And his father gave a little sermon for Waddles at the burial. And he said, son, just remember that everything that we have, everyone that we have, is a gift from God. Remember that. Everything we have is a gift from God. And then he said, don't bury yourself in the grave with Waddles. You must look up and live. You must go on and live. Don't bury yourself in his grave. What beautiful words to hear at a time like that. We too sometimes feel we want to die when we've lost someone we love. But the Lord's saying, like he did to Martha, lift up your hearts. Know that I'm the resurrection and the life. Whoever lives and believes in me will never die. And the Lord asks us that question tonight in the gospel. Do you believe this? Say, yes, Lord, I believe. As tough as it is to go through so many things in our lives, if we go through it with Christ, he makes it possible to keep on going, to live. Jesus got hungry when he was in the desert, like you and I do. Jesus was thirsty when he was dying on the cross. how we often get thirsty. Jesus got depressed in the Garden of Gethsemane the night before he was going to die. He was filled with such fear and anxiety that he sweat blood. He was depressed. Jesus was betrayed by his disciples. He knew what it was to lose relationships. He suffered all the things that we suffer. He suffered the death of Lazarus. He suffered the death of his foster father, Joseph. And so we can no longer say he doesn't understand. He does understand us. And it helps me, and I hope it helps you, because when I know that the Lord's walking with me through a crisis that's happening, it makes it so much easier to keep on going and not to just lay down myself and die. And so those are consoling words in this fifth Sunday of Lent. We look forward to celebrating the joy of Easter, the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. And that's what we need to keep focused on, that Jesus came to give us life and to give it to us abundantly. Sometimes I've heard thousands of confessions since I've been a priest, 42 years now, thousands of confessions. And in many of them, they were so touching, just like Jesus was here in the gospel. Because some would become so steeped in sin, or so remorseful and so filled with guilt because of something they seriously did wrong. But they come there with all the courage they can muster up sometimes to just come and ask Jesus for forgiveness. And it's a joy of the priesthood to reach out and know it's the hand of Jesus through me that just says your sins are forgiven. Simple couple of words. And the weight of all of that brings a person to a new kind of life, a new spirit. And that's what the Lord offers to all of us, that we can always go to him when we're spiritually suffering and know that he can lift us up. So take advantage of that sacrament. There's another story. I conclude with this one. Hope I can remember all the details. But there was a man, his name was Jeff Blatnick, and he was a gold medal winner in 1984 in the Los Angeles Olympics in Los Angeles. And he was in the wrestling competition, and he won the gold medal. But instead of standing up and cheering and waving to the crowd, he immediately got down on his knees after the win, and he made the sign of the cross and started to pray. And the cameras were able to go on his face, and they could see the tears just flowing down his cheeks. Here was this 220-pound wrestler on his knees, weeping. What he was doing was giving thanks to God for winning the Olympics, because 18 months before that, Jeff Blatnick had surgery for cancer, and they thought that he would never go to the Olympics again, but he was determined. God healed him. He was able to come back and not only compete, but to win the gold medal. And the first thing he did was give thanks to God. He was a person who was suffering from something difficult, but he relied upon God to get him through. And then we see his humanity. We see his humanity come through. We see the humanity of Jesus when he wept over Lazarus. And that's important for us. His divinity is so wondrous, but so is his humanity, to be like us. So today we thank the Lord for people that witness to the glory of God in so many ways, and we ask the Lord to help us to witness it by our lives. 2 weeks left of Lent. It's not too late if you've gotten away from your penance, if you've not done the things you said you'd do. Just find something new, perhaps, and simple that you can do for 2 weeks. It can be very easy. And maybe it's just spending a little extra time just praying to the Lord.